Welcome back to Finding Direction. I am excited to hang out with you today as we dive in with Jason Marc Campbell. Now, a little bit about Jason. He is a consultant, he is a speaker, and he is an author of the book called Selling with Love. On this episode, we talk about many different things, one of them being how you can work from Bali or essentially anywhere that you want to work in the world and create a beautiful life for yourself. We talk about how taking a sales job may actually be the change that you need in your life. And we talk about why starting with impact can lead you to your purpose. All right, we dive into many things in this episode. We're going to get right into it. So enjoy this conversation with Jason Marc Campbell. Jason Marc Campbell, welcome to the show, my man. I am pumped to have you here and also love that you're calling in from Bali. That just makes this extra awesome.
Yeah, Stu, it's such a pleasure to be here. And I'm hoping for some who are inspired to find direction. Bali seems to be one of those places that a lot of people come to find direction. So for me, came here. I like the direction I'm going, and hopefully I can inspire others to learn more as well.
Yeah. You know what's crazy when you say that? One of the most lost times I was ever in my life, my plan was to go travel for 8 months, and I accidentally ended up in Bali for 3 weeks. And that was like, a huge part of kind of like figuring out pieces of my life and stuff. So it's interesting you say that. That's the first place I went to find direction. So full circle right here.
For sure. And it's so interesting because Bali is one of these places, like you're right, when someone's looking for direction, especially, in your early mid 20s, and you're like, what am I doing with my life? Maybe you've started a career and then something doesn't feel right. There's a lot of people who say, put this on hold. And Bali has this kind of vortex energy.
Yeah, it does.
We'll do one of two things, like depending on where you are in your life. One is if you're already on a path, it'll help you clarify things. You'll find direction and you'll be like, thank you, Bali. Like, this is great.
Yeah.
But if you haven't done the inner work, Bali will throw you around. Like, you'll get more lost when you get to Bali first, but only for a way to get yourself found is you really got to get lost. And so I see a lot of this transient community coming into Bali, getting really lost into Bali. And it's almost like, the mother island is just giving you what you need as medicine.
Yeah. There really is a beautiful energy on the island and with the people. And there's a lot of really beautiful aspects. I'm curious for you in your life. Did you ever have a moment where you were like, I need to travel and find myself? And was that ever a piece of your life?
I wouldn't say the travel came with the needing to find myself, but if we're diving right into it, for me it was following up a breakup where I'd been dishonest to my partner. I'd been unfaithful to my partner. This was in my late 20s, like not a proud moment in my life, and that kind of is what spun me into okay, I need to reinvent myself and become a better man, become a better person. It didn't come with travel, although I remember a fork in the road moment, which was like, do I go travel and see friends to kind of get over this breakup? Or do I just bunker down, find myself a coach, and start doing the real work that needs to be done to grow up and become the man that I'm proud to be? And I ended up bunkering up. So I have been lucky enough to do a lot of travel. So maybe I didn't have as much of the travel urge. I've been living in Southeast Asia for almost 9 years now. So I was like, okay, no, the travel thing, check. The inner work thing, it's time.
Yeah. So cool. So if we dive then, way back to the early days, go ahead and fill our audience a little bit on as far as like, what was life like for little Jason and kind of, what was that world like?
Yeah. Well, so I was born in 1980. I won't go that far back. But, I think the most relevant thing for me is, I remember at a point where I was about to graduate university, I was going to business school and I was like, what the hell do I want to do? Like, I've been spending this time in university. It's been a good time. Now I need to start this career. I'm going to career fairs and, people are like, you can join this management trainee program. And after like 3 years, you'll be a manager making 60,000 Canadian a year. And I was like, what? I want to be a millionaire. This ain't good enough for me. I want to really hustle. I can work hard. I want to make lots of money. I'm hungry and ambitious. And I don't know for anybody listening, if you've ever been to those career fairs where you're like, the structure of the career development makes it so safe and boring that the income is also not there because there's no risk
Right.
almost, right?
Yeah. Yeah. True.
And I felt like a bit more of a risk taker. And I'm very blessed that at the time, it was actually my sister. She worked in a real estate company and she was an office manager. And she's like, you need to meet this guy who was one of the brokers. And when I met him, he was the most hardcore sales guy. And he taught me like how to do sales. He's like, you're going to do a job where you're going to work on the telephone and you're going to book appointments for realtors. So it's what they call an inside sales agent.
Huh.
And I was like, oh my God, am I going to be a cold caller? Is this what all my university education has led me to
Yeah.
start? I was like, I'll give it he sold it to me really well,
Yeah.
obviously.
Painted the
And when
dream.
yeah, right. And then he's like, you get to be in control of your income. But, it ended up being the best gift I ever had because, our fear of sales, our fear of rejection is something that holds us back in getting a lot of things we want in life, whether it's, asking for that promotion or taking a chance to go for that interview for an amazing job. And even in our, personal lives is, asking that person on a date, and
Yeah.
it affects you
Totally.
everywhere. And what happened is I ended up getting on the phones first times being terrible at it. And, who would have known? You start something new, you start being terrible, but then
Yeah.
you get better. You get better. And it'd been some of the most foundational work I'd ever done to get, to build that backbone around, hey, if you communicate a message and it resonates with people, there's techniques you can use to persuade people to take a certain action that can be empowering for themselves, empowering for your
Yeah.
objectives as well, and everybody can win. And the rejection, the classic, it's not you, it's me. It's like, well, no, sometimes the client just doesn't need what you offer, and that's okay. It could be
Right.
no, it could be not now, and it could be yes. But regardless of the outcome, it's a win of getting more information, getting more clarity, and moving to the next one.
Mm.
So that had been kind of my trial by fire. And I'm so
Yeah.
lucky that I had that because sales stayed as a part of my DNA. It opened so many doors for me.
Yeah.
And, long story short, ended up working for this organization called Mind Valley for 7 years, took on so many roles, brought a lot of sales methodology within the company, launched some amazing programs, and now wrote a book around selling. And my whole
Yeah.
premise is how to sell with love. And so it goes full circle.
Yeah. I think it's, interesting to hear you say your early experience in sales. When I think I started to really get like my foot into the quote unquote like real world or professional world, it was in a network marketing company. And so you do a lot of selling. And when I came into it, I was this shy, quiet kid that, didn't like, I was never going to talk to a stranger. I was never someone that like enjoyed communicating with people and having conversations. But once I got into that world, similar to you, it taught me so much about myself. And it's so interesting that sales kind of does that to you. It's like I was not someone that was like, yeah, I'm going to be in sales or like do this or that or whatever. But it was like by being in sales, you have to work on yourself a lot. And by default, when you work on yourself, it just enhances every area of your life. So it's really interesting. I think, even for anybody that's listening to this and they're going, yeah, I'm doing something, I don't like it, or I'm trying to figure out, it's like, hey, maybe go into sales for a little bit and do some of the dirty work, because when you go down and you do those things, whether it's the cold calls or, the meetings I was doing, it's like, you're going to learn a lot about yourself that when you go into the next chapter of your life, you're going to be so much more prepared, regardless of what that next chapter looks like.
It's funny. I speak to a lot of sales trainers, sales professionals, people that lead organizations around sales, and they always speak about sales being kind of that position that people end up in as the backup option. Like the first thing didn't work, so they end up a salesperson. And there's almost
Huh.
like a guilt or a shame that gets associated for people that go into sales. And I'm like, no, like you mentioned, if you choose sales first, it builds the foundation not only from a skill set that you will have, that I think is one of the most important ones in any career building opportunity you want to go into. If you have a background and an awareness of how sales works, you will be better equipped than anybody else. And then you speak about the personal growth journey. The
Yeah.
feedback you get in sales is so instantaneous. You can't help but grow. Like you get instantly rejected. You get to instantly learn,
Yeah.
instantly try again. And for most of us, we try to get into, like, if we went to school and let's say we're used to having good grades, right? And so we're passing exams, we're doing good.
Yeah.
Going into sales is very counterintuitive because your probabilities of success are going to be like 10%, 20%,
Yeah.
30%. So you're going to fail much more. You're going to fail every test. You're going to be below 50% unless you're dealing with the most qualified leads with an
Yeah.
amazing brand and you're like guaranteed success. Then they're probably not going to need you, right?
Right.
But if you're in sales, 30% closing rate, you'd be like, wow, look at me. I'm failing. I'm still below 50%, but this is considered a good ratio. So the other thing I always love to bring up is, everybody says if you want to grow, failures is, what allows you to grow and learn. So the more failures you get to have, the more growth and awareness you get to go with. So guess what? You're in the highest fail rate position when
Yeah.
you're in sales. So the growth comes naturally.
Yeah. Super true. And, I think one thing, regardless of what you do in your life with your career, or if you're an entrepreneur, if you're working a job, is it's like, there's one thing that you need to do. I almost want to say in almost everything in your life. I don't know. That's probably an over exaggeration, but it's selling yourself, right? Like if you want to go get this kick-ass job for this amazing company that you would love to work for, a huge part of that, like, yeah, you got to have the skills to get there, but a huge part of that is you got to sell them on you. Like, hey, I'm your guy, I'm your girl, I'm your candidate. Like, if you want to have a beautiful relationship, you're going to have to sell your partner on, hey, I'm the guy, I'm the girl you want to be with. It's like, there's so many aspects of your life where you have to sell yourself. And if you can sell yourself, you can open a tremendous amount of doors.
Yeah. And I make this exact same comparison, and I even take it a step further, which is if you're in a relationship and you want to maintain it, grow it, also sales. If you're in a job, you want to get promoted, you want to push forward initiatives, sales again. So for me, the way I define sales is an energy exchange between conscious beings. And energy is being exchanged all the times, whether it's selling a product or service, selling ideas, getting a job, getting into a relationship. It's the way that we relate. And oftentimes sales comes with that negative connotation. So it triggers people. And there's only one time in my book that I say, all right, for the sake of the triggered, we're going to substitute the word sales with communication, with objective, right? And we're all trying to accomplish things in life. So we usually have objectives whenever we're having communication, whether it's like, oh, well, I want to make sure I look good or I look smart when I'm having this conversation. Or maybe I'm having a communication and I'm really hoping this person has a different point of view after our conversation. Maybe they're going to implement this one idea. For anybody who's a coach or a trainer, you're trying to get your client to take powerful actions from their higher self, then yeah, you need to sell them on why it's better to delay the instant gratification and go for the things that's going to bring the highest value into your life. So sales, absolutely everywhere. Absolutely love it. And what I usually add to this definition is when you know what you offer is so much more than what you ask in return, that's where the love comes in. That's when the love is what balances the equation. And I love using the word love because you go to like hardcore sales teams and you're like, ladies, gentlemen, you just need more love. They're like arms crossed saying, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And I start breaking down. I love speaking about 5 loves of selling. I explain what are the different emotions you can sell from, because some of us feel blocked with shame and guilt. Some of us, operate from a place of fear or pride. Some of us rationally sabotage ourselves and we're like, oh, I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to take the responsibility. What if it's not the perfect product for them? But when you come from a place of love, you know how to lead, you know how to take risks, and you know how to take care of people. And that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta lead with love. That's, things work out when you lead with love. And so, one thing I'd be curious is, so you graduate, you're got your diploma, and all of a sudden having to have conversations with family, friends, people around you saying, oh yeah, I'm gonna go, be a cold caller. So I'm curious, like, what was that process like for you to say no, even though with all the pressure of I'm going to the real world, I'm supposed to do X, Y, Z, that's what the world says or whatever, you're like, I'm gonna go do this thing. And I'm curious, like, what was that like to take such a different approach than I think what most people would say you probably should have done?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I started the cold calling was actually during my last semester of university. So I got to do this on the side while I was in the process of graduating. interestingly enough, I actually recruited a bunch of my friends to come work with me, and we built our little
Nice.
sales team. We had a great culture. It was so
That's
fun.
awesome.
And I think I naturally was like, if I get to be invested in something, I naturally get excited about it. So I think there was a
Yeah.
way that I would explain it to people. They'd be like, oh, because I'd say, listen, I can wake up early, I can do a bunch of calls, and I can take a break, I can travel, I can do it from anywhere. This was back in 2010 or 11,
Huh.
around that time, maybe even
Yeah.
2009. And so people like the concept of working from home and being able to just do it from the phone. That was completely foreign back then. And so
Yeah.
people were curious about it. But what also happened by taking a job like this is it started opening some doors to new opportunities. Now, I'm Canadian. And in 2010, what happened is through this employment, there was an individual within that company that was also starting a side business around buying US real estate. 2008 had just come through. Great
Mm.
recession was in effect, foreclosures, short sales everywhere. It was chaos. But as Canadians, we actually didn't get affected as much, and our real estate values stayed quite high.
Hmm.
So everyone was sitting on equities within their home, which means they could access a lot of money.
Oh.
So this guy started teaching Canadians how to buy and invest in US real estate. I was like 22, hungry. Again, I had the
Yeah.
starry glaze, like rose colored goggles and wanting to make millions. And this guy's selling a real estate investment seminar. For those who might want to understand clearer what probably this looked like, think Trump University or like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Kiyosaki style, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like innocent, ready, hungry. I'm like,
Yeah.
let's get it, right? So
Yeah.
at the same time as I'm doing the cold calls, I end up offering my services to the company that was educating in exchange to get access to the learnings. And I started being hungry. I consumed everything. I got together with my best friends. We pooled some money together, bought the mentorship program, which
Hmm.
still opens another whole can of worms where we ended up investing in a mentorship program. These mentors got us to buy, like put offers on a bunch of properties, brought their cousin along, said, this guy's going to fund every deal you buy, only to put us in a room where we recorded testimonials saying, this is the greatest program ever. And once those were recorded, that cousin disappeared. We had a bunch of properties under contract and no money. And we're like, oh no, like, did we just get taken for a ride here?
Uh-oh.
So I had to figure everything out. And luckily, I found that whenever you're deep in trouble, but you still have good intentions, the right people seem to pop up and come around.
Hmm.
So, a tangent from your original question, but I ended up, having the right people came to educate, correct, and make things right. The people with the money ended up buying the properties. Some crazy stuff we did, like we did
Yeah.
creative contracts where people would fund the deals before we bought them, so we could close on them, renovate them, put tenants in place, sell it back to them, make a small profit, move to the next one. The highest paced learning I've ever had in my life, which came with cost of like small depression in the process
Yeah.
by stress. But damn, we're capable of a lot as humans.
Hmm.
Like I'm always surprised by as much
For
pressure as you can
real.
put on people. We can break through, especially if you again have good intentions, you're hungry to learn and you're working hard. There's amazing stuff that can come out of it. So to answer your question, yeah, people
Yeah.
were wondering what the hell are you doing cold calling? But to be quite honest, Stu, the real answer to that question is nobody cared. Like nobody cared what I was doing. Everyone was trying to figure out what they wanted to do. The amount of
Yeah.
like cares that people had around what I decided to do in my career path was like, it's only I cared about what I thought that they would care,
Right.
only to realize that they don't care at all. So if you're feeling like, oh my God, what will people think? Not that much. Luckily, though, parents, dad was an entrepreneur, mom stay at home, and they actually did not have this like be a lawyer, be an accountant. Actually, my dad was like, if you're a lawyer, I will disown you. Like he hates lawyers. So as
That's
long as I wasn't a
hilarious.
lawyer, I could do anything.
Yeah. That's so cool. Dang. So if we jump to continue to jump through your story, so you're doing the cold calls, and eventually at one point, do you start to come across Mind Valley and realize, okay, things are going to change in my life. I'm going to move another direction. Kind of walk us through what that was like.
So I'll skip a few years, but regardless, I stayed close to the real estate world. My company got acquired by um, this other company that was teaching Canadians how to buy real estate. Because the whole program was incomplete, I ended up being the one to correct the program based on what I had learned by going through this trial by fire.
Huh.
And with the right people, I ended up just putting together a real solid program to help the Canadians do it the right way, not in the way that was like kind of a hack.
Yeah.
And as I did this for a few years, we came across this blog, which was teaching online marketing techniques from this company called Mindvalley. And we were big fans. The founder was a bit of like, the same way that I'm sure your community looks up to Tony Robbins. Our
Yeah.
community was looking up to this Vishen Lakhiani being this
Yeah.
incredible speaker and like founder of Mindvalley with a mission to, change the education system of the world. It was amazing. And at the time I had started the travel, I ended up living in
Yeah.
Thailand for a little while as I was still doing the real estate stuff, and I was still coaching people, and I could do this remotely. So this was back in 2012. And
Okay.
in 2013 is when I realized from one of the emails that was sent from Mindvalley, I could go visit their office. And what people need to realize is Mindvalley had one of the like Inc. magazine's top offices of Southeast Asia. Think of the Google style of office, but in
Nice.
Southeast Asia. I'm in Thailand and their headquarters is in Malaysia and Kuala Lumpur. So I'm like, wow, that's a short flight. Let me go check it out.
Yeah.
And at this time, you have to realize too, like I was very skeptical of what people say they are online and what they actually are. Like I had been jaded. I was like,
Interesting.
anybody can go online and say, look at me, I'm a
Yeah.
millionaire,
Anything.
successful. And most of the time I'd been left disappointed only to realize that people are just, boasting and they are not as real as what they project themselves to be online. So I go to Mind Valley thinking these guys look pretty good online. Let's see if they're legit. And I was like, wow, amazing young people working there, doing incredible
Yeah.
stuff, like hundreds of employees in a beautiful office. And I'm like, this is the real deal. And at
Yeah.
the time, I was just visiting. I still had my job. I was doing fantastic, making a six-figure income at 24 or 25. And after I visit the office and I had this amazing kind of good vibe energy about what was going on there, I go to the cafe and I had received an email from my boss at the time saying, we can't have you work remotely anymore. You need to come back to Ottawa, Canada. Now, let's be
Ooh.
clear. If you've had a taste of what it's like to live in incredible places around the world, the idea of returning
Yeah.
to Ottawa, Canada is not the sexiest in your mind. And so I'm like, this is divine intervention. So
Yeah.
right then and there, I wrote a cover letter, send my resume, and you had to do a video to apply for this company.
Oh.
So I just recorded a video just saying, my name is Jason Marc Campbell. I'm ready to apply for Mind Valley. And lo and behold, ended up being hired, stayed there for 7 years, worked on some incredible projects from launching a New York Times bestselling book to creating the first recurring revenue models to launching a university or think about a seminar that lasts 1 month in a beautiful new city. Just crazy projects all the time, which
Dang.
has been key to connecting with the right people, learning the right things, and being introduced to personal growth. Because before that, that was very foreign to me. I'd never meditated, but being exposed
Yeah.
to all these things has been just the next step in my evolution.
Yeah. Love it, man. And so I'm curious, what sparked the I'm gonna go live in Southeast Asia initially? Because I mean, especially with COVID recently, people can travel and move and work from wherever. But I feel like there's many that talk about it and few that do it. And you're, someone you mentioned you've been doing it 9 years. So I'm curious, how did that sort of like where the idea come from that, what, I'm not staying in Ottawa. I'm not even staying in Canada. I'm going halfway across the world. Like, where did this all come from?
Yeah. I got very lucky. And this was back in university. I was just doing my thing in university, having fun. Like I enjoy my university times very much.
Yeah.
And there was this one friend, and she was a lady friend, and she had went to Thailand on an exchange. And when
Hmm.
she came back, she was like, Thailand is the greatest experience I've ever had. I highly recommend people to do an exchange. And I had never thought about it, but usually you try to do things to look cool in front of women, especially in university. And I was like, wow, I'll apply for an exchange and I'll go to Thailand too. And
Yeah.
like maybe she'll notice how cool I am. Well, that had been a catalyst to the biggest shift in my life because I ended up being accepted. And I went on an
Huh.
exchange to Chulalongkorn University in Thailand. And the best thing that happened to me by doing the student exchange is number one, my idea of what Southeast Asia was is like completely skewed to thinking it was underdeveloped. I did not realize that these are bigger, more developed cities. And so similar. Like, as much as there's some differences, so similar to any other big city in the world. I was like, oh my God, the world is really small, you know? And the traveling to there was not a big deal. The second thing that happened that was so beautiful is by doing a student exchange, I am here in Thailand with other students from 20 to 25 years old
Yeah.
from around the world, only to realize how similar everyone is, regardless of where they come from, gender, race, cultural background.
Yeah.
We all had more in common than more things that made us different. And I think that's a very beautiful experience to have, because if you've always been in your same city, everything that seems important and relevant in that city, you
Yeah.
realize sometimes that maybe it's not that relevant and there's so much more to the world. And now it was like, wow, my mind had been opened up that you can do a lot of things from everywhere. And you don't need to be stuck to that city. So that was the catalyst to make me realize that the world is small. And then I ended up, once I was working in that company, doing the real estate, that I could
Yeah.
work from home, ended up doing a relocation to Thailand. It was a very interesting thing I did. And you've heard of the book, The 4 Hour Work Week?
Yeah. Yeah. Read it.
Tim
Great book.
Ferriss, 4 Hour Work Week. I remember reading a passage in there saying you got to be an entrepreneur and you can make a ton of money, or you can renegotiate with your employer. And this is what I did. I went to my employer at the time, and I knew the cost of
Oh,
living in
cool.
Thailand was about 1/3 of where I was living. So I went to my boss. I say, I'd like to renegotiate my salary. He's like, Jason, you're the highest paid employee in this company. You're making 6 figure plus commission. You got a free car, free cell phone. What else do you want? You're like in your mid 20s. You're probably the only guy in
Yeah.
that age range that's doing this. I'm like, and I agree 100%, which is why I'd love for you to pay me half. And that, now I have his attention. I said, let me do a trial with you where you pay me half. You don't count my hours. I deliver the same work, but you let me work from home. He's like, let's give it a try. And that's why I went to move to Thailand, where now my purchasing power was higher than it was back
Yeah.
in Canada with half the salary. So employer wins, I win. And then I decided to go live out there for a while. And I mean, that's what got me to the proximity of Mind Valley, and that chain of event brought me
Right.
to where I am now.
So you just sent it. You just said, "Give me half." That's wild. So what? I guess for you, it was more important to have this experience of life than it was to be the typical quote unquote picture of successful, making 100 grand, living in Canada, doing really well. For you, it was more important to enjoy the the, the experience of life, right? And so you were willing to say, I'm not looking at anybody else's picture of what success looks like. I'm looking at what my picture of success looks like. And I can only imagine that it took some courage to make that decision, right? And say, I'm going to move, I'm going to pick up my life, say bye to my friends, say bye to my family, and just do it. I'm curious from your perspective, is that at all in alignment with kind of where your head was at? And, I'm assuming that it had to take some courage as well to make that decision.
As you say this, the one thing I can point to is, like, most of us have this idea, like, you're working, you maybe get a few weeks of holiday, and then you get to do something incredible, and then you get back to work and you're maximizing the revenue you're making. I think I got very lucky because my father actually works in an industry that's quite seasonal, swimming pools in Canada, which means
Hmm.
there's a lot of months that it's just winter and pools is
Yeah.
not relevant. And I've always witnessed him closing his stores for months at a time. And all
Huh.
of the employees that would work there would work like 60 hours a week during the summer and then take a lot of time off in the winter. And I think that actually created this idea in my mind that it's okay to take a lot of time off, especially if you're working
So
really hard
cool.
in the times that you're on. So when you mentioned what you just said, I think that ended up being something that never gave me this. Like, every company I ever worked with, I was always the one that would take the most amount of unpaid leave. Like, to me, that was just natural. It was like, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to take three. You get 2 weeks of paid vacation. I'd be like, yeah, that concept was weird. Like, paid vacation. I was like, what do you mean I get paid for not
Yeah.
working? That doesn't make sense to me. So whatever they would say on unpaid leaves, I didn't care. To me, it was just like, well, I'm going to go spend a month with my family in Canada. I'm just going to put, I'm just going to take 20 days of the year,
Yeah.
book them as unpaid leave, because I would always live way below my income. Like, whatever income I'd make, I'd maybe be spending like 60% of it.
Huh.
And so to me, to take, 20 days of unpaid leave, it's like, oh, but you're missing out on a bit of money. I was like, so what?
Yeah.
For the company, they get to save money. For the
Right.
time that I am there, I'm more recharged and higher effectiveness, which led to me to getting more promotions and higher raises. Like, so to me, like you speak about
Yeah.
needing and the courage, like, no,
It
it
just
didn't
made
even actually,
sense.
it just, this seems so natural to me. And while every job that I've ever had, where I am the one who takes the most amount of unpaid leaves, I'm probably the one that got the highest amount of promotions based on frequency and of amplitude. Like I remember, I think the first raise I got in Mind Valley was like 50% raise in 6 months. And then I think another 50%. Like it just kept being
Yeah.
crazy. And then to me, it's like every time I take unpaid leave, then I give it an opportunity for people to miss me in the workplace. And when I come back so supercharged, fresh, new ideas, all
Yeah.
that good stuff, then I dive in, implement, and then people be like, wow, this is incredible. So it kind of worked for me. But mind you, I understand not all careers allow for that opportunity.
Right.
But if you're in sales and marketing, usually it's a good thing.
Yeah. And I think it's a beautiful lesson for anybody to take from this, where it's like, what's the picture you want of what you want your life to look like? Like for you, not for anybody else, not for society, not for what it's quote unquote supposed to be. Like, what would you want a successful life to look like? What would you want your life to look like? And just like you did, allow yourself to just do that. It's such an interesting thing to hear you say, because I've grown up so much around, just like the ideal principles of, it's like, well, you're going to take a month off. Like I would be one of those people. It's like, wait, what? You're just going to disappear and hang out with your family for a month? Like, um, but it's such a cool, I just love that. That's the way you've looked at it. It's awesome.
I do have to recognize that I've just been extremely lucky that I haven't been in a place where I felt the scarcity in my life, right? And this
Yeah.
came from huge advantages and privileges that I've had from a younger age. I have
Right.
to recognize that. But as I got older, there's a lot of the beliefs that I formed myself around, being modest in the way that you spend, being like modest in the way that you live
Yeah.
based on what income you're generating now. And so I think that actually is one of the key things that opens up to freedom. Like
Hmm.
for those who are looking at, finding ways to get out of the 9 to 5 to find more freedom, I think there's a disciplinary action that needs to be taken and a liberation that comes when you really get yourself in a place where, okay, I've minimized the expenses and I've made compromises to the point that my income is much higher. Now you have more flexibility to even take time off, not feel so stressed, be able to open your eyes to new
Yeah.
opportunities. A big thing that I speak about, which is more related to sales, is if you're being needy for your own needs, it's hard for you to be a servant to others, to serve with love, right? And to
Yeah.
really take care of others if your own needs aren't taken care of. And I think we sometimes fall into this like loop where we have needs for ourselves that we can't fulfill because our lifestyle is at a certain level. And then you're continuously trying to keep up and it keeps you in a high stress environment. It doesn't keep your eyes open to opportunity. It doesn't
Hmm.
allow you to be flexible to jump and seize opportunities that come your way. So these dependencies and neediness can really get in the way of the abundance you want to be bringing into your life. So I think there's something to be paying attention to right there is if you can find yourself in a position where you can have, you know, at least your finances under control, even at a like whatever you're doing at a micro scale is going to expand the bigger you get. Your habits
Yeah.
are going to follow you at whatever income level you're at. And
Yeah.
so I think that's something you can actually do
True.
at any time, get those foundations right. And then when you're like, okay, at least the bills are under control. Like I got a roommate and I'm living with other people. That's fine. I don't need my own house. Or
Yeah.
maybe I don't even need a car. I can use it. Like you can make these sacrifices that then you're like, okay, now if some opportunity comes where I need to relocate, I can jump on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, 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 very cool. So as we go forward in your story, I'm curious, at what point, I mean, you're doing everything with the real estate and then you go to Mind Valley, and obviously sales has this silver lining throughout all of this, but at what point do you go, okay, this is like, I'm going to start speaking on this. I'm like, this is going to be my thing that I'm going to help people with. I'm eventually going to write a book on. Like, when did the light bulb click that like, okay, this is my thing?
What do they say? Like overnight success is like years in the making, something like that.
Yeah.
I remember joining Mind Valley and they made us do some goal setting exercises. And this was back in 2013. And one of the things I decided to write is I want to write a book, is an experience that I wanted to do. This is 2013. And then I think it's back in 2015. There happens to be a workshop on public speaking that happens in the office. And everyone would call me the sales guy. They'd be like, Jason, he's the guy who could sell anything. He's just like, he loves selling. He loves selling all the time. And I decided to come up with a little talk, which was like why selling is the greatest expression of love. I thought it was a good headline, a good angle. And I just did a talk on it and people were like, oh, that was pretty good. And then there was this big event happening at Mind Valley called A Fest. And this is like top tier speakers that are going on there. The Dave Aspreys, the Lisa Nichols and a lot of big name people that are in the personal growth space were on that stage, and they'd be like 300 people. And I was the volunteer at the back of the room that would be putting the mic on the speakers and doing the audio, putting the welcome music, like just doing the AV, they say, at the back of the room. But what I ended up doing since I did that first talk with the training at Mind Valley is I started going to Toastmasters, refining the talk, practicing it. And then when I got close to that event, I went to the founder, which was Vishen. And of course, the salesmanship might have come in handy because at least I wasn't afraid of rejection to ask for what I wanted. Yeah. So I went to him and I said, I'd love to be a speaker on the stage. And he just like looked at me awkwardly and kind of laughed, tried to hide it. And he's like, kind of trying to say like, but you're a nobody. Like, why would I put you on a world stage? Like, come on, don't be asking me something so ridiculous. But he's just like, I'm sorry. And then he's making some good excuses to why. And he's like, you have to understand, I have to. And I just told him, I'm like, well, I just want you to know I have an amazing talk prepared. And if you put me on that stage, I'll be one of the best speakers, I promise. And he's like, I appreciate your confidence. You're a good boy, but go back to do your AV.
Yeah, damn.
Here's an interesting thing that happened. And I'll fast forward through this one. A speaker canceled. And I went back to him and said, I'm ready if you need to replace the person. To be rejected again, to find another speaker in the crowd that could jump on, who also canceled on the day of, which left them trapped with an open slot. And I just said, listen, the universe is trying to tell you something that's really obvious, which is you need to put me on that stage. And I was just given some clear instructions, which is, Jason, don't mess this up.
Yeah.
That was it. I got voted best talk for 20 minutes at that event from talking about selling with love. And for anybody who goes on YouTube, you will find selling is the greatest expression of love. It's got like, I think 60,000 view talk, good, very well rated conversation. But that was the catalyst of like, ooh, this is something that resonates. 2015. It took until 2019 to make a decision that this is something I should write a book about and maybe go more into. All of the resistance, nah, don't do it. I'm still working as an employee at Mind Valley. I got other things. I'll take care of other people. My needs, put this behind. Selling with love. Am I really the guy to do this? I don't know. Do I have enough experience? Am I good enough? Do I have principles? But I'll tell you, when I made the decision to do a workshop around writing a book on this idea, to flesh out an outline, to challenge my ideas, to go through the process of writing a book, which took 2 years, that had been the best experience to really get clear on what is it that I wanted to teach, test these theses, develop the idea, and really make it phenomenal. And I'm so happy that it, this was a 9-year journey from saying I wanted to write a book to actually publishing it. 9 years. And now it's gone phenomenal reviews, bestseller on Amazon. And I get to advocate something I truly believe, which is if you learn to sell and do it from a place of love, you'll open doors, you'll provide for companies, you'll never need to look for work in your life, and you'll be doing good in the world and you'll feel good doing it. And I think it's a powerful thing.
Love it. Love it. And we'll put that in the show notes too. So for everybody, selling with love, and I'm sure you can find it anywhere and everywhere. So Jason, I'm curious for you, man, for anyone that wants more info on you, they're like, I need some more of this guy, need to come hang out with him in Bali. Where's the best place people can find you, stay up to date with you and everything you're doing?
Yeah, I think, the easiest thing is for people to check out sellingwithlove.com, because I host a podcast, as you mentioned earlier, and you can find me interviewing amazing people in sales and mindset to really help you be more successful. But if it's okay with you, Stu, I could give a gift of the free chapter of the book and a meditation for people.
Absolutely.
So
please.
If anybody's interested in that, I'll make it really easy. You just go to sellingwithlove.com stu, which is STU. And you'll be able to opt in, get a meditation, and as well the first chapter of the book, which is really interesting.
Amazing.
The first chapter I speak about is why you hate sales. Most people hate sales, and we need to do an investigation before we even get to the place of love.
Dang. Love it, man. Well, everybody make sure you go to that, get the meditation, read the first chapter. I'm looking forward to it as well. And my last question I have for you, we ask this to every guest because we want to help people find direction, but do it through action, is what would you say is one thing someone listening to this can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life?
You know, the first love of selling is actually love the impact. And I divide it into the impact you make for the client you sell to, the impact for the world, and the impact for yourself. I think to find direction, if you can think about what is an impact you would love to leave on the world based on you doing any of the activities that you're thinking of doing in your life. Like, are you looking to eradicate poverty? Are you looking to help with, like, maybe it's climate change initiatives? Maybe you're trying to see politics have less corruption. There must be something you'd love to see fixed in the world. I think if you take the time to be clear on the impact you'd love to see in the world based on what you do in your life, and just be more clear on that, just write it out, spec it out, just being like, these are problems I see in the world that I'd love to see be a little less stressful on the world. I think that starts giving you some direction on where you could go and open up your mind to some potentials of, well, if this is something that's important to me, where could I get closer to people that are working on these initiatives, where I could get curious, connect with them on LinkedIn? That would be some powerful things you could do right after this podcast. Just jot down what impact things you'd love to see change in the world, and go on LinkedIn, see if there's one person working on this already. Connect with them. When you connect on LinkedIn, add a note just saying, I just did an exercise and realized that I'd love to see this be fixed in the world. And it sounds like you're already doing it. I'd love to connect to hear more about how you got into this world.
Dang, if that's not like your lunch wrapped up in a bag and handed to you to figure out the next step of your life, I don't know what is. That's a beautiful way that you've shared that. I've never heard someone say it that way, but I love it. Right? Look for what's the impact you want, and then let that guide the next few steps. And you've laid out the next steps beautifully. So again, Jason, thank you so much for being here today. For everybody that's listening, go check out Jason, see what he's up to. And thank you again, my man, for all the beautiful wisdom that you brought with us today.
It was my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me, Stu.
Absolutely.